we are the enabler of the American reindustrialization. We hope that these tariffs will not come. Would it hurt? Yes. The environment for innovation in China put up by the state is pro-innovation, whereas we in the EU and in Germany have put a lot of regulation.
Trump tariffs, competition from China, and a sputtering economy. Germany is struggling and so are its businesses. Joining me is Bertram Kawlath from the industry association VDMA. Let's get started with exports. The US is the single biggest export market for German machinery outside the EU. The machinery sector, very important to the German economy. And now Trump is putting tariffs on the car industry, could expand that to even more sectors. Is this an existential crisis for many German companies?
It's a threat for German business, for our biggest export market outside of the EU. Is it existential? I should say no. Most of our member companies produce machines and equipment which you cannot buy in the United States. And we are the enabler of the American reindustrialization. So would it hurt? Yes. Would it hurt existentially? I'd say no. In the end, tariff always hurts all of the inhabitants of a country. So we hope that these tariffs will not come, but we don't know.
Trump has threatened to put a blanket tariff on EU exports. Now, how likely that is, we don't know. But why do you think Trump is punishing German exporters, especially the threat over the heads of an industry which hasn't charged high tariffs the other way around?
I can't look inside Donald Trump's head, and it's not up to us to decide what the American administration and the government is doing. We often hear him talk about fairness and about acting on an eye level, and I think in the tariffs between the EU and the United States for machinery and equipment, which are between 1% and 2% and are more or less the same, we have that fairness. So I would say there's no need to change everything. If I could ask for a change, is let them put them both to zero. And whatever will happen, we will see.
So the US also imports some amount of machines from China. China is a massive competitor against Germany in the kind of global market. And we've seen that China is competing more and more in third markets against German companies as well. Wouldn't it be an advantage for Germany if Trump put more tariffs on machines exported from China into the US?
In the end, international trade is connected. Many of our companies have global value chains, and again, tariffs would hurt that. We do not want to compete against our Chinese competition via tariffs. We want to compete with competitive products, with innovative products. And I think we're doing quite well in there. Also for China, the United States is the biggest single export market. So there's fierce competition. Let that be played with our machines, not by tariffs.
Okay, but why has German industry failed to stay ahead of China when it comes to competitiveness?
You think we failed? I don't think so.
But you can see, if you go out to the halls here, you can see rows upon rows of Chinese stalls of companies selling things which used to be the exclusive preserve of German industry.
The environment for innovation in China put up by the state is pro-innovation, whereas we in the EU and in Germany have put a lot of regulation, especially if you take like artificial intelligence, value chains, CBAM. We have become world champions in regulation. And now we notice that we cannot export regulations. We have to export cars, we have to export machines and products. And we have to relearn that. And the EU is doing that with the omnibus we have now. But in some field, Chinese competition is not always playing fair, especially in third markets. We have a slowing Chinese economy that pushes the export, which is sometimes heavily subsidized by the government, and we have to see into that on WTO rule-based behavior. But in the end, I wouldn't say that the Chinese competition has surpassed us.
A lot of the regulations that are in place in Germany, so it's been argued, are to stop wastage, to make sure that there isn't environmental damage. You can talk about labor laws that are in Germany, which ensure that people can retire at a decent age with a decent amount of money in their pockets, those regulations that don't exist in China. And a lot of criticism has been that we've exported a lot of our manufacturing essentially, effectively, to China because they can just do it without all of the labor laws, the safe working that we have here.
No, but that's not the situation of the machine and equipment manufacturers. We have mainly our production here. Most of our members are producing in the EU. We buy components and parts from China, but the machinery and equipment manufacturer, we don't buy basic goods. What you said might be applicable to very basic goods, talking T-shirts or stuff like this. But if we purchase an integrated group for a machine in China, it's also Chinese high-value product where good wages are paid, where there's safety in the companies, because those workers you were talking about will not be able to produce a high-quality, high-tech product.
Do you see that there's enough innovation to be able to get ahead of Chinese competition, or do you think at a certain level there's just a wave of commoditization where essentially China is able to make a lot of the things, like I said, that used to be the exclusive preserve of Germany, and they're just catching up in so many more of these products that in the end, a lot of the stuff that used to bring in a lot of money into Germany is just not going to do that anymore, and German companies need to innovate or die?
I don't think that you're correct in the assumption that China is ahead of us. We're at Hanover.
In some areas it is. I mean, if you can look at other industries for much kind of sharper examples, like BYD selling its cars into Europe now.
Yeah, but you had to ask the VDA members for that, the car producers.
Absolutely.
In our business, they're good competitors. And in some areas, yes, they're better. In all areas, they are not. We're at Hanover Fair. You can see the high-tech companies we have here. You can see the AI applications of Siemens, for example, and of other exhibitors. We still have the world's largest industrial trade fair here, which is a window to shop for these high-tech. And we are still exporting them all over the world. So does it stay like that? No. If in Germany, if in the EU, we will not learn how to create a better environment for fast innovation. That is what I meant by let us be faster. If you take AI, for example, we have one of the toughest AI regulations. And I was meeting, 1 year ago, I was meeting congressmen from the United States, and they said, in Europe, first you regulate, then you develop the technology. This is not fast. We have to have the technologies first, which we can export. And then if we see how these technologies develop, we can regulate carefully and manageable. And we were not good at that.
So you're the head of a lobby group, so your job is to go to the government and kind of represent the industry and, get them to change policy to benefit your industry. You want lower taxes, higher subsidies, looser regulations, less bureaucracy. Is that fair?
No.
No? Okay, go ahead.
We need lower taxes because in Germany, the taxes on companies is higher than even the OECD average, close to 30%. So we're asking for 25%, which is not the lowest in OECD standards. We are not asking for more subsidies. That was my objection, because VDMA members are very broad in the business. We are sometimes very often smaller companies, SMEs. Subsidies, like tariffs, they might be good short-term for certain industries. We have to ask our demands for broad industry. And for broad industry, it's way better to have an innovative environment in the country, like better schools, better education, and things like this. We are not asking for subsidies for a certain branch, for a certain fabric, because that would enable to socialize risks and to privatize profits. So we're not the association.
So you don't want any of these hundreds of billions that Merz is handing out?
we are not asking for subsidies. We don't think that subsidizing is a proper way to make an industry competitive. It's competition. And to be competitive in the competition, we need a good work environment. Well-educated people, low taxes, innovative surrounding, good universities, free trade agreements, that our smaller members can export their goods. This is what we're asking for.
But a lot of your smaller members don't really have the capital as is at the moment in the status quo to invest in things like AI and automation to the level that they might want to. And do you think that cutting taxes by itself would be enough to be able to release money for them? Because a lot of them may even struggle to borrow as well because they are smaller companies. We're talking under 200 people here, right? Is tax cuts enough?
Now the question is, why don't they have enough capital to invest? We have just published a new study which asks about the cost of bureaucracy. You said it's a typical demand of lobby groups. Yes, but why? In that study, we found out that a small company pays more than 6% of their turnover for bureaucracy. And there were people going with a stopwatch through these companies, more than 6.3% of turnover. That's more than the typical profit of such a company. So we spend the money somewhere else. Then we are 5% over OECD average in taxes. It's another 5%. So we are already 10% short. It's very hard to earn 10%. So we have the money, but we spend it elsewhere. We lose the money in inefficiencies created by the government. We have another study, which we will publish later this day in Hanover, which found out that by application of AI, also in these smaller companies, we could raise the profit by 10%. So there's always a chance. So that's why I'm asking for innovative surroundings, less regulation on AI to make use of those showcases, less tax. And if you add these effects, then the money is there.
The difficulty in Germany is that a lot of these companies find it very difficult to identify the spaces where that they can innovate and how to innovate in those spaces, because these are highly technologically specialized companies that need a kind of custom AI input. And especially when you have lots of different companies separated out, lots of family-owned companies in many cases, or small companies, they just don't have this kind of collective knowledge base to be able to implement it effectively and efficiently. Essentially, what I'm saying is that Germany's kind of small and medium enterprise backbone is the very thing that's holding Germany back because it's so fragmented. And that if there's much more consolidation in the industry, that's when you'd see the effects that you want.
I disagree in several points here. First, what you say would mean be big, then you're good. And I would say vice versa. Our small companies are good because they're small, because they're specialized, because we have all those hidden champions in their areas.
So why are orders dropping so significantly then? Is it all external effects? I mean, these companies have no case to answer for, it's just the government?
No, but let's sort that. Let's sort that, please. First, I doubt if they would all be better if they're big, because the orders drop for large companies the same way as they do for small companies. Second disagreement is it's not like AI has been around since 10 years and German SMEs had missed since 10 years to invest in AI. That's not true. Most of the companies do work with AI even today in their machines, in making their machines efficient. It's not only Siemens, it's a lot of the smaller companies. And the pressure on AI is driven not in the least by demographic, because we have less and less educated people to work in our companies, and it's a pretty new technology. And our duty is now to bring that new technology with a data room, like a European data room as Manufacturing X, into the SME company to make it available. The AI was on a worldwide level looking for business cases, and now we're developing these business cases. Why do the orders drop? no, it's not only external factors, but there are a lot of external factors. The Russia's war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, is a severe external factor. Broken value chains, which we had after Corona, was an external factor which still has its echoes going around. China, with the economy going down, is an external factor. Trump and his tariffs are external factors. They're responsible. Bureaucracy, regulation, taxes are an internal factor. And these factors all add up. And there are some which we cannot move, but they're the internal factors where we can work at, where we have to work at.
So if the government doesn't do what you ask, they don't significantly lower taxes, remove bureaucracy, because it's been a common complaint for many, many years about removing bureaucracy, and it just hasn't happened to the extent that small and medium-sized enterprises, the machine building industry would like. What will happen? What's the worst-case scenario that you're looking at?
Economy is going down, tax income is going down, and unemployment will go up. Very straightforward.
What will happen to these companies?
Some can move and will move, and those who cannot will suffer. So there's a high pressure, and over the last years, when we asked to help the industry with reforms, digitalization of the government, for example, we have asked for it since years, and our companies, especially the small ones, are years ahead of the administration here. That was covered up by demography, because so many people due to age were falling out of the labor force. So there was no unemployment. But as we are moving from a rule-based global economy to a power-based global economy, and we have all these international distortions, the pressure on reforms is way higher than it used to be 10 years ago.
So what should the government do to make sure that there is a next generation, not just of specialists to work at these companies, because they're often highly technical companies, very specialized companies, that require a high level of education, but also the leaders of these companies? Well, many of them are family companies, and the leaders are going to retire, and the companies aren't necessarily in a great shape for passing on. And there is the threat that foreign private equity is just going to come in and snap up some of them. Others will die off. Others will have to consolidate to survive. And again, even if the government acts, if it just doesn't act enough, you don't have the next generation of leaders even to enter into all of these companies as much as is necessary.
I don't fully share your pessimism here. There's a risk, yes. What should the government do? Making debt is not enough. So we need the reform of the government to make the government way more efficient, to digitalize the administration, to create a positive environment for R&D, for innovation, and for growth. As I said, to grow, you need money. To innovate, you need money. We don't want to pay that money for bureaucracy or for too high a tax. We have to work with migration, because we will not be able to fill all the open positions in our companies out of Germany. That will be clear. We have to work stronger with AI to fill that gap. So with people from abroad, with AI. So there are a lot of areas to work on. And we are ready to work with the government on this.
But do you think that increasing migration is politically viable at the moment?
If you do it in a clever way, yes.
Okay. I should say, to put forward the optimistic case, right? Because, you're right. I was a bit pessimistic. The fact is that Germany is Europe's leading economy, one of the leading economies in the world, and that small and medium-sized enterprises and, of course, the machine building industry make a massive contribution to that. But the issue is about maintaining and growing that. And I think the worry is, especially when the government is set to pump hundreds of billions of euros into the economy, that it's going to keep a lot of companies that just aren't viable on life support, zombie companies, they call them. It's kind of an insult to call these places zombie companies because a lot of them have tried and worked very hard. Do you see that as a significant risk?
I don't see these zombie companies in our industry because we face fierce global competition. Our industry exports 80% of their production. So we have international competition and whatever Germany does, we have to fight on an international level. Is there the risk if the government pumps hundreds of billions in? Yes, it depends on how you do it. If the government starts subsidizing single companies, single productions, if the government uses debt and those millions in order to avoid reforms, because reforms are hard for politicians, because they hurt, then there would be a risk. Why do we put the pressure now on the coalition partners or on the possible coalition partners? Because we want to avoid that. We say, yes, that will hurt future generations, but it might be justified now because the international situation has changed, but now spend it wisely. And don't forget the reforms and work on a European level. That's important.
Okay, I finally want to touch on defence. A lot of money is going to increase defence in Germany, in Europe. I imagine a lot of the companies that you work with, your member companies, will make the machines that make the bombs and guns. So do they set to kind of benefit from a wave of orders from the increase in money in the defence industry?
Now, first of all, the money is being pumped into the defense industry because of external threats.
Absolutely.
Because of an aggressive Russia on the one side and an isolationist USA on the others. So there's a total change in European policy and a need which has not been there in that way before to stand on our own feet. So that's the driver. The driver is not searching the business model there. What the machinery and equipment producers do is we enable scaling up production. We can scale up the production of forklifts, we can scale the production of cars, and we can scale the production of armored vehicles or drones. So yes, probably the industry will participate. We are not it's not our main markets. We are much more driven by building industry, for example. So when there's the money going into infrastructure, that will impact us way more than defense. Is defense important? Yes. Is scaling up defense important? Yes. Because what good is the most modern company and factory we have if our neighbor throws a rocket inside of it? And we have seen that in Ukraine. And we are fearing that with our Polish neighbors, our Eastern European partners. So it's necessary. We are enablers of scaling. Is this the most important area of business for us? No.
Okay. Just my last question for you. Despite all of the issues that Germany is facing and all of the calls that you've made to the incoming German government that's expected to come in the next few weeks, are you optimistic about the future for your industry and for Germany as a whole?
I couldn't work in my job if I wasn't optimistic. Yes, I am.
All right. Bertram Kawlath, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.